Good morning. Morning, welcome all to our book club this morning. This is 25 biblical laws of success. We are now on chapter 8. This is the law of resilience. All right, so excited to be going over this chapter again. This is uh, part 2. All right, so we are 3 chapters in for part 2, which is all according to the laws of work. All right, getting the job done. And so yesterday was a powerful chapter. It was the law of courage, taking risk, but not being unwise. Right. It talks about calculating your risks. Right. It talks about investments, making sure that you put your money in the right place to where you can start seeing some rewards. Today, we're talking about the law of resilience, and we're going to jump right into it today. Revelations chapter 2, verse 26 says, "To the one who is victorious and does my will to the end, I will give authority over all the nations." Now, Revelations chapter 2, verse 26 describes a situation in which those who overcome enormous adversity will be given authority. Power, success, riches are all given as rewards to the winner. It is important to notice that this verse does not refer to professional matters, but to faith and salvation. However, we mention it in a figurative way and use it as a consistent with the law of resilience, which says to get a victory, a game must be played, a job must be done, and risks must be taken, like the risk we talked about yesterday. There's no reward without the risk. The ability to play the game, and take the hard knocks is inherent to good players, right? Just like in a competitive job market, your employability level rises as your adversity quotient rises. Adversity quotient is an expression developed by Paul Sorts, right? And so we learned about this before. Well, we hear IQ all the time. There's something also that's called an EQ, which I've learned from one of my mentors. But here we're going to cover IQ, EQ, and AQ. So, Paul Stoltz, the American economist, after interviewing over 100,000 people to understand why some people make it and some people don't. The more significant but cold and rational intelligence quotient, the IQ, and more effective than psychological evaluation of the emotional EQ, the quotient, the EQ, is the adversity quotient, AQ, which explains why persistence may be worth more than talent. That's huge. A lot of people get hung up about not being talented, or less have less ability than others or opportunity. But if you are more persistent, it's saying here it is worth more than talent. There's a lot of people that have good talent, great talents. Um, they just don't take the opportunities. They don't take the risk, like how we talked about yesterday. And they might try something, and things are all aligned. Everybody says this person is going to do great. They have the skill, they have the talent. But what happens? Sometimes they fail, and they don't try again. Right? They give up. But it says you got to be persistent. Based on his study, Stoltz divided people from three professional groups. Now, this is huge. He says there are climbers, campers, and quitters. Climbers are those who are in search of challenges. They are people who refuse to be insignificant. Quitters, on the other hand, are those who are risk averse, meaning they avoid risks. They look for the comfort zone. And then there's the third type, the campers. They are between the climbers and quitters. They fly the colors, but only to a certain point, right? They're not sold out. When risk arises, they tend to sit on the wall. The classification of adversity quotient was created as a way of evaluating how people deal with challenges. Those with a higher AQ do not blame others when circumstances and problems arise. How many of us are guilty of that, right? We start to blame others for how come things aren't going right, things aren't growing right, things just haven't never been right. Right? We're so quick to blame other people, but people with a high AQ do not blame people when problems arise. They know how to take responsibility. They do not seek. They do not see the setbacks as an obstacle. They accept that problems occur, but by force of circumstance, rather than because of personal nature. The law of resilience is precisely about knowing how to deal with adversity. Now this is big here. It says being resilient. Wait, let me recap on that again. I just want to repeat that. The law of resilience was this chapter right here. Altogether is knowing how to deal with adversity. Being resilient is about being able to cope with pressure. The term originates in physics and represents the property of accumulating energy without breaking when pressured or submitted to distress. A good example is when we step on a deep carpet that is squashed, right? But then immediately returns to its normal state after we step off. That's huge. That shows resiliency, right? So you're always able to bounce back, whether you're trying to climb the corporate ladder or you're trying to build up a business or an organization, things are going to come up. You're going to come across some issues, some circumstances, whatever problems there are, but you got to be able to rise back to the top, right? Bounce back. That's something that we had in our conversations, my wife and I, as we face problems. Like, it's all right. We just got to make sure we always bounce back. And that's been our MO. We've always been able to counteract the enemy. We've always been able to come out of circumstances, come out of the hole. Reading on, it says, in order to pass an exam or win a race, you have to be resilient and persevere to reach your goal. This is how you overcome adversity. Many people have greater ability. Some have better learning abilities, but he says you got to keep trying in the end and don't give up. Some people have all the opportunities, but they end up giving up. There's a Brazilian saying that says, in order to pass a test, you should not study enough to pass, but rather study until you pass. Perseverance is usually more important than financial potential and intelligence. That's huge. Perseverance is more important than financial potential and intelligence. Right? Knowing how to deal with difficulties is a skill that can be developed. Right? So you got to repeat that to yourself or tell somebody that. If you don't have the ability to deal with difficulties, as it's saying here, the good news is it can be developed. Right? So if you were never good at handling difficulties, got good news for you. You can start to learn how. All right. So once again, we have good examples of resilience in the Bible. King David declared, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will feel no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Psalms chapter 23, verse 4. No matter what the valley you are facing, the Bible teaches you not to despair, but have the vision of possibilities, of triumph and hope. David was a great climber. He took on a bear, a lion, a giant, and he had the faith that he would overcome the obstacles. Let his example inspire you to overcome hardships. Right? Learning from mistakes. The testing of our faith, James chapter 1, verse 3 to 4. The testing of our faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. In the face of problems and adversity, we experience defeats, setbacks, and failures, right? But some of these are not necessarily derived from a mistake that you made. Maybe they're just a part of the game. Not all of your defeats are from the mistakes that you've done. However, it's important to always try to figure out if we could have done something differently or how to be more prepared in the future for when we face this challenge again. The world is changing fast and we need to keep up. After failing, some grumble while others learn. That's huge. After failing, some grumble while others learn. As Klaus Moeller says, when the winds of change blow, some build shelters and feel secure, but others will build windmills and grow rich. Love that. The courage to face up to and learn from your problems is one way of becoming competent. That's huge. So what it says here, Klaus Moeller, I love that quote. When the winds of change blow, some will build a shelter and be secure. Feel secure, while the others build windmills and get rich. You always got to find the opportunity. There's always some kind of opportunity for you to capitalize on if you just keep your mind open, keep your opportunities open. Reading on, it says, crisis, defeats, and accidents are part of the learning curve. We should not despair in our situations, but rather learn from them. Horace said, adversity has the effect of eliciting talents which, in prosperous circumstances, would have lain dormant. Nice. It's saying the adversity brings out your talent. Sometimes you got to go through some issues so that you can learn how strong you are, how much of an impact you are. You can learn how resilient you are. And sometimes through your adversities, you will see your skills come through. It says, otherwise, if it was not for that adversity, your skills, that these talents that it's talking about that you would have developed in these circumstances, they would have lain dormant. They would have never been tapped into. You would never know how good you were, right? And what God has really put in you if you hadn't gone through that situation, right? And so I like that song, Through It All, and it talks about that in the third verse, right? Thank God for the storms that he brought me through. Why? Because it showed me how good of a God he is. It showed me how strong, how powerful, how you are in his care no matter what. And it also shows you what you are made of, right? Otherwise, it would have lain dormant. As authors of this book, now here he goes. He talks about himself. This is William Douglas and Rubens Teixeira. They talk about how successful they were and how they've overcome all the circumstances that have come their way, right? In their careers, they built on their defeats, right? That's huge. They always try to see where they went wrong. They never gave in. When it comes to dealing with mistakes, the problem is not the mistake itself. When it comes to making mistakes, the problem is not making the mistake itself, but rather repeating them. That's big. So you always got to learn from your circumstance, learn from your mistakes. When you got a problem going on, make sure you learn from it. Ask yourself that question. Throughout the journey, they recommend that you follow the lessons of William E. Deming and the PDSA plan, the plan, do, study, act cycle, in which you plan, do, study the results, and take corrective action at the next attempt so you don't fail just like you did the first time. This really works. This is how the system works. You have a plan and you try it. If you fail, discover the mistake that was made and plan again, try again, only better. The neuro-linguistic programming (NLP) approaches teaches us that we need to know what we want, pay attention to what is happening, and the results will be obtained. And have the flexibility to change until we get it right. Right? It says here, this was the lesson we learned from the defeats we suffered. You will never be a loser or a failure, no matter how many setbacks and defeats you experience along the way, as long as you stick to your dreams, have a good attitude, and keep planning, keep learning from trial and error. That's how we made it. It says we challenge you to draw up a strategy and overcome your obstacles. I highlighted this part. Says sooner or later, you will learn everything you need to know to make your dream come true. And it's reading on. It says don't believe those who criticize your failures. All right, so here we go. Here we go to dealing with other people along the way, right? Do not believe in those who criticize your failures, who tell you that you'll never make it. They are negative people, and even if their intentions are good, and even if they say in order to spare you from frustration, they are not people you want to listen to. You need to surround yourself with those who dream with you on the same level, or who at least don't stand in your way. I'm gonna say it again. You need to surround yourself with those who dream with you on the same level, or at least don't stand in your way. If there is someone who criticizes you and offers good arguments, step back and evaluate what they're saying and see whether they have any truth in it and whether you need to change or make an effort. But give a wide berth to those people who are merely being pessimistic. All right, so give a wide berth, right? That means you got to keep your distance from people who are just being pessimistic, or maybe they just want to argue. You know, we come across those too. Maybe they just want to argue for the sake of arguing, or they want to argue but they don't have any bearing to the perspective, right? And so for those people, if you can't change their mind, the, let me tell you, there's no way you can do it. All right. So if you drop your facts, you drop your concrete, points of view, right, and they can't change it, they refuse to. Don't give them a second. I learned that from a multimillionaire. Do not give them a second. All right. It says, but give wide berth to those people who are merely being pessimistic. Keep in mind that the results will come from your victories. It will pay you back with interest the temporary frustration defeat can bring. Nice. And every time you face a problem or crisis, ask yourself this question: what is this situation trying to teach me? All right, so we're finishing off with this quote by Epicurus. The great navigators owe their reputation to showers and storms. It's huge. The great navigators owe their reputation to showers and storms. So it's saying that we got to be resilient. You are going to face problems, but when you go through them, you always got to learn to evaluate. You always got to learn to see what can I do to make it happen next time. If I fail, what could I've done better? What do I need to do? Ask somebody, find a mentor to help guide you, to help lead, to help lead you through that storm. Right. But at the end of the day, it talks about um, a lot of that resilience, I would say, comes from an outside source, from other people that are looking in. There's a lot of people that are going to talk. If you step up to do anything, you put your head up, right, and you set yourself up to achieve some kind of a goal, whatever that is. There's always going to be somebody who's going to count you out. There's always going to be somebody who's going to look at you and just, in the back of their mind, they're going to think that you can't do it, or they want to just, put throw oil spills your way. They want to throw rocks at you. They want to throw comments at you and call you names and just whatever. They're negative people. And it says right here, like, if they have any truth behind what they're saying, then see if there's something that you can do to change. If not, give a wide berth to them, meaning keep your distance from them. Now, it's a naval term for people that have boats and stuff like that, but you want to keep your distance from those kind of people. Why? Because there's nothing good that's going to come out of that conversation. Once you figure it out, I would say, entertain the conversation for a little bit, see if they have any truth behind them. But if not, get away from them. You have no business dealing with those kind of people. And a lot of those people are going to cause you a lot of issues. And if you're not resilient, some of those people are going to shoot you down. Right? So you got to learn to keep your distance. And with everything that you go through, that mentality that is teaching us here, it's so huge. Whatever it is that you go through, you got to learn. You got to ask yourself that question: what am I going to learn from this situation? Right? I think that's key, because the writers of this book right here are saying the reason why they're successful is because they figured it out. It's not about making mistakes. It's about repeating those mistakes. You're going to waste a lot of time making the same mistakes over and over and over in your life. Right? It's time to start learning from your mistakes so that you don't have to repeat them. You can save your time. You can get on with yourself and get on to the next level of success, whatever field you're in. All right. So that is the law of resilience. Thank you for joining, you guys. Again, it's a blessing to read along with you all, and I pray that you're getting something from this. And if you have questions, comments, drop it here. Also, we're going to be posting this on YouTube. We're going to grow this thing and make it, impact some lives here. All right, so we're going to be doing some big things. We're excited about that. God bless you all. Have a good night. Talk to you soon.